Awesome. Well, it's good to see you, Kim.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks for meeting with me. I know you've been really busy with the store and all the projects you got going on.
Ah, well, it's good to get away from just click and save and copy and paste.
Yeah. You've also been recording audiobooks.
Yeah, but yeah, I have done a little bit of recording, but a lot of it is I have the dictations, I have the invocations. So,
I see.
but you have to create all the files and tie them together and this and that. So it's still a lot of work.
Clickety clacking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a couple questions, and because I've been really curious. I know that's came up in the last conference that went on in Lithuania around the this topic of reaching the 96 level. And I've really been curious to ask you more about your own personal experience and what you remember from that time, and specifically what it was like for you to go into your service, and maybe in a way that you haven't gone into detail before. Again, I know it was a really long time ago, so I wanted to know that difference and just ask you
Yeah.
more about that along the way.
Well, at the time, I didn't have the concept of the levels of consciousness. The master hadn't given that teaching about 144 levels. So what I had from the Summit Lighthouse was this concept of personal Christhood. Um, but, if I think back to it, um, I mean, it happened, my breakthrough was in 2002.
Mhm.
That didn't mean that I had resolved all of my psychology at that point, but it
Right.
was my breakthrough in sort of overcoming the focus on self. But it had started long before that because, well, first of all, back in I think 1990 or 91, I really became serious about working on my psychology. So I started using various kinds of therapy and much more looking into my psychology because I realized that the spiritual path is all about psychology, resolving psychology. Um, I had understood that intellectually before, but it didn't really hit home for me. And I see a lot of people, even today, not necessarily only as Zen Master students, but a lot of spiritual people out there, they haven't gotten that point because they still think there's some kind of shortcut. You meditate enough, or you
Mhm.
give decrees, or you do this self-inquiry, and you have an awakening, and suddenly you are awakened. But some of these people who have gone through these experiences, they've also come back and say after a while, the psychology comes back.
Mhm.
So there is no shortcut. I mean, that's what I realized in the early 1990s. And the other thing I realized was that, well, as I saw it back then, what I realized was it's about overcoming the ego.
Mm.
And I had a somewhat primitive understanding of the ego back then, but I did realize that the ego is something that colors the way I look at life,
Yep.
and you can't see it when you're inside of it. You can't see it.
Yep.
It's just it's you're so used to it, you take it for granted that you don't even think to look. You're not even looking for it. Uh, that's what I realized at the time.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that came to me was that this concept of surrender, which was something they had. It wasn't really emphasized that much in the Summit Lighthouse, but it was certainly talked about. Mother Mary had given this concept of surrender. She even had a rosary of surrender, um, and it really sort of hit home for me. So for years and years, I was working on that, looking for things in my psychology, and then surrendering them. Um, and this wasn't as effective as what we have today with the concept of the subconscious selves.
Mm.
But I still resolve some subconscious selves by doing this because you come to see some patterns in your psychology and you have this concept that this needs to go and I'm going to surrender it. I'm going to let it go. So you can actually make progress that way. And And then gradually, I mean, if I look back, you know, I know this is, I always think about it, talk about I've been on the path for so long, but there's actually some value in that in the sense that you have to have a long-term perspective on the spiritual path
Right.
because if you're the instant gratification attitude, you will run into disappointment after disappointment,
Yeah.
and you might give up on the whole thing, or you might just you know how they have in relationships to have this concept of the Peter Pan syndrome
Mm-hmm.
that men just flitter from relationship to relationship. But you have the same in spiritual people. They go from guru to guru, from organization to organization, from technique to technique. You know, if this doesn't work, then there must be something else, you know. And eventually, I mean, if you're going to get anywhere, you can keep flittering, you know, or you come to a point where you say, I have to look at myself, I have to look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, where was I going with this? I think I was going somewhere. Um, yeah, when I first found the spiritual path, I was very eager to make progress.
Yeah.
I found it when I was 18 years old. I read Yogananda's book. I was really eager to make progress. And the first organization and teaching I found was Transcendental Meditation. So I threw myself at that very eagerly. And one result of that is I took this course in teacher training in Switzerland, where the last month we had some Vedic teachings, and they were very similar to what today they call non-duality.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a concept that was out back then, uh, but um, but it was something from the Vedas, you know, where you have these enormous cycles where you come out of Brahman, you have all these incarnations, you suffer, you discover the spiritual path, you gradually work up to being enlightened, and then poof, you just disappear back into Brahma.
Mm.
And boy, that just didn't sit with me at all. But I didn't know what to do with it. I was just wondering, you know, can this really be the purpose of everything? Because it was anti-motivation. Uh, so in other words, my eagerness was really challenged by this. So I was actually depressed for 2 or 3 years because
Yeah.
it was like nothing really mattered. And I had these experiences, you know, I've had these experiences of a reality beyond my normal state of consciousness, but I didn't really know how to deal with it, what context to put it in. And so I was really in a low point there, and I gave up on TM. And but then I found the Zen Master teachings in the early 1980s, and that rekindled my belief that we are going somewhere. Because what I realized was instead of just disappearing into nothing, you can ascend
Yeah.
and become an ascended master.
Mm.
And that I could log into. Intuitively, that felt right. But that just meant that now I became even more eager to follow the spiritual path as it was outlined by the Ascended Masters in the Summit Lighthouse. And there it was all about, you know, decreeing a lot, and and you know they had their headquarters in Montana, so the best thing you could do was go there and be on staff and work there and decree as much as you could and pass all these initiations and this and that. So I threw myself at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so where this eventually is going is that in the 1990s, late 1990s, I began to see in glimpses that there was something. I just didn't quite, what would I say? It wasn't consistent. There was something missing in the way I looked at it. But it was something in the beginning, I was very hesitant to think about it because you realize this is again why it's important to have this that I've been on the path for a long time because I started in 1976, right? So now we are in the late 90s, so it's 20 years that I've invested where the most important focus of my life was the spiritual path. So the thought that snuck in once in a while was that there was something missing in my approach. And of course, my ego then would say, but it can't be because you couldn't have wasted the last 20 years of your life, right?
Right.
And so I would sort of push it aside again, but it would keep coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking at it a little bit more. And then in 1997, I moved away from the Summit Lighthouse because Elizabeth Care Prophet retired and the organization went through some turmoil. And, you know, in 2002, I sort of started thinking about this more. And there was like, well, two things happened. In 2001, I had my birthday in December. I can't remember how old it was, doesn't matter. But for some reason, that day I was in my office, and in my office they had these pictures on the wall of the I Am Presence and
Mhm.
Saint Germain and Jesus. This was the Summit Lighthouse pictures.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, without having decided this was out of mind, I just looked at these pictures. And what came to me from the bottom of my being was, I want more. I want a more direct relationship with you, the
Mhm.
masters. And it was not my outer mind, it was not my ego.
No.
Um, but it was like it really made me think, what does that, what would it take then? Because it was obvious that I'd been on the spiritual path, I'd known about ascended masters for almost 20 years at that point, and um, I have done all of these outer things, but that hadn't given me that relationship, that closer relationship that I wanted. And if you have any questions, just break in. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I guess
no, let me just finish
yes, please.
because
Please.
I'm almost where I wanted to go with this. So, mm, as a result of having come to this realization, I realized there was something in me, deep within me, that wanted a close relationship with the masters. But there was something in my outer mind that was blocking it, because that's the only really logical conclusion. And so I was pondering that. And then, 2002 comes along, we get into August, and that's where I have this experience. I was sitting in my office, I had given some decrees, and suddenly I just saw how my approach to the spiritual path up on that point had been driven by not necessarily ego, but more of a human ambition,
Hmm.
where I wanted to be a good student. But the way I looked at that was doing all the outer things. And suddenly I just saw, I mean, it was almost like I was outside of my body or outside of my mind. And it was like the message describes it, the conscious you steps outside of the four lower bodies. And I just saw how much my approach to the masters and the spiritual path was affected by this outer ambition. And I saw it was just all unreal. It was just all, I mean, you can explain it in various ways, but you can say that it was my ego trying to walk the spiritual path so that it could get into heaven. But I saw it was never ever going to happen. I mean, it just couldn't happen. It was completely impossible. It was not that it was wrong or anything. It was just impossible.
Hmm.
And as I saw this, I felt this release. I just felt this release. I just let it go. I let go of that ambition. And that's what I wanted to get to because this is what ideally happens at the 96 level. What followed after for me isn't the same that's going to happen for everybody because everybody has their own relationship to the masters and their own divine plan. May not involve directly working with the masters or talking about the masters like I've been doing. But there is that there is that moment where you see the human ambition that has driven you so far.
Yep.
You see that it's only going to take you so far, that it's not going to take you beyond it. And then the question is, can you let it go? Can you surrender or will you hold on to it? And some people hold on to it. I mean, I don't know if they have the same. I think if you really hold on to it, you probably will not have that experience of seeing it
Yep.
because you're not open to seeing it. You see, you have to be open to seeing it before you can have the vision. So it's possible that there are people who are close there, but they're still denying it. They would deny the vision. They would refuse to see their human ambition and how it's coloring their efforts, or even their view of the path, even their view of Christhood. So to me, it is essentially a surrender
Mm.
because it's what I let go of. See, in a way, you could say, up until then, I had been walking the spiritual path, but I had been focused on myself as an outer person. And when I saw that, and I saw that that outer person was never going to get to into heaven, never going to ascend, uh, and let go of it, it wasn't that I was instantly, in the fullness of Christhood or anything like that, but it was the essential turning point that I saw. Yeah, I simply saw that I needed to take an entirely different approach. And I let go of that desire, that need to defend that outer self.
Mm.
I mean, there was still psychology, lots of psychology to work through, but it was a shift in focus. I had really let go of that um, focus on myself as an outer person. It's the only way I can describe it.
So I want to talk more about that because I had an experience recently where I feel like I've been doing this dance with my ego and that self, that crux point for a while now. And I think I've been um kind of turning away or trying to avoid something or trying to not
Right.
see something. And I think what came up for me recently after talking to Yulita, it was a really profound thing because it was like I could feel Mother Mary's love reflecting this mirror of all that I'm still enacting, like through my ego, like these separate selves that are judging, that are, just doing this dance with just really believing that I am my ego. And
Mhm.
I was sitting in my bed and it reminded me of what you've articulated in videos before, where you feel like this numbness, kind of like you kind of go jelly. I don't know if you use that word, but I was sitting there.
No, but I mean, I know what you mean. You go
Yeah.
soft.
Yeah, I soften and I'm just looking, and it kind of really made me question my entire identity. And I've come to this a couple of times, and before it would really send me off in some kind of emotional spiral, but it didn't do that this time. And it was more of just like, well, I just, because I've been working towards these goals, right? I've been up until this point kind of not wanting to participate in society. And then last year, I got this energy and this push to, make some decisions and make some choices and make some goals and go for it. And then I was sitting on the bed and or laying down, and I was just like, I just don't care about any of that stuff. I didn't feel any victim energy. I didn't feel like I just truly just didn't care. And I'm like, okay, well, if I don't really care about any of this stuff, then what's the point? Like, what am I really here to do? And and then I probably just went in to try to avoid again. I probably went to my phone to distract myself because that's something that I do a lot to just
Hmm.
psychologically cope with being here, to just distract me. Because I think for me, when you say like you let go of that focus on self, for me, I think I've identified so much with how traumatizing it has been to be on Earth
Hmm.
that I'm like, how can I not focus on survival and, money and things like that? Even though I'm okay, I'm safe right now, but there's these selves that are still just like, again, not in that moment, in that peaceful state. I didn't feel that way. But thinking about just what you've just shared, that's what comes up, like those separate selves and the stories they tell me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I guess I've just been dancing around this for a while, and I know it just comes down to making a decision. Like, am I willing to look at these selves and to go past that point? But
Yeah, but I think what you're articulating, what a lot of spiritual people go through, myself included, and that's why it's so important to have this concept of the avatars that the masters are given. Because it was only when I got that I could start seeing my own experience. Because I mean, honestly, if I look back at my life and my childhood and my youth, I never wanted to be on this planet, you know? And I sort of had the feeling of how did I end up here? And that's because we came here with the best of intentions, and then we were exposed to this shocking experience, this trauma,
Hmm.
the cosmic burst trauma, as the masters call it. And
Hmm.
since then, we haven't wanted to be here. And but see, what is it that doesn't want to be here?
Yeah.
It's the ego, the outer self. It's the cells that we created in order to cope with the trauma. Because even though we may not be exposed to the trauma right now, just being on Earth reminds us of it or activates these cells. So we feel like you said. I mean, I can see that myself also. You're safe right now, right? But
Hmm.
still, you wonder what could happen. What could happen next? And so you're never really comfortable. You never really feel safe.
No.
And but you see, when I say you, that's the outer self.
Hmm.
It's not the conscious you. That's why it was also so revolutionary for me to get this concept of the conscious you, because I had experienced my conscious you all of my life in various experiences, where you sort of step outside or like you say, you go soft in a sense that you're not analyzing, judging, uh, you're just experiencing. And there's no opinions
Yes.
of fear or anything like that. And so if for me the essential understanding there was that this is who I really am. I'm not the outer self, and the conscious you cannot be hurt by anything on earth. It's only the outer self that can be hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was laying there on my bed and I realized I was like, because after I connected with Yolita, it was like this clear feeling, and I thought it was Mother Mary because I mean, how
Yeah.
I felt it as. And but what was interesting was that it took me a while to really process that, and I
Hmm.
realized the thoughts that I was having. It's like I was shown the mirror of who I really think that I am, like the outer self, the ego is the separate self,
Hmm.
and I'm not. But it was like, okay, well, then what do I do beyond that? And I think it brought up like fear around service. And I was wanting to ask you about like the courage, or maybe it didn't feel that way. Maybe you were just flowing with the river of life, of like eventually being able to sustain your life by giving your gift to the world. Like that to me is always what I've known I'm here to do. But just again, that survival self, the one that has PTSD from like just being able to survive here, I'm like, how did you get the courage to do that? And like, how did it start for you? But before you go into that, I think I just wanted to acknowledge like, again and reemphasize the outer self, the separate selves that I know that I have. It's like dealing with this severe PTSD of even being here. And I notice like I get exhausted even with my own ego and my own separate selves, because like I know any interaction, I'm either going to be comparing myself to someone, there's some type of game that's being played even subtly from my ego of like, oh, you're better than this person. And it's just these projections that I know are not me, but it's still, I still can I get involved and get identified with these projections, from within of like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you're better than this person, or just it's so it's so exhausting.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. It is exhausting. But see, I think it's important to realize that the experience you have, that's the real you, that's your frame of reference. But having that experience doesn't mean you've overcome the outer self, the ego. So that's as soon as the experience subsides, where you're not totally absorbed in it, the ego comes in, and now it wants to do its thing.
Yep.
It wants to impose some kind of interpretation on what it should mean.
Yep.
And so it's like it always wants to have it wants control, and in order to have control, it needs to understand it. You need to be able to label it and put it in its rightful place in your little file cabinet in your mind. So that's what you are experiencing that happened after the experience, you know. And it's again this one aspect of it, and this is also what I went through with this TM experience, that nothing matters. What really matters? I don't want to do anything in this world. And I've, in a sense, had to deal with that all my life because not very many things I want to do in this world. Um, you know, for my own pleasure or gratification. You know, there's not a lot of things I enjoy doing. So, so that's one thing. But the other thing is this, the practical thing. You know, you have to be able to make a living. You have to be practical and this and that. And so I think again, you know, it's very, very important to be patient and realize what you're going through is just a phase. And it won't be forever that you're going to feel like nothing matters or what do I want to do. But it may be for some time,
Yeah.
depending on how much you need to go through and how much you need to process. Because I actually had a similar experience not a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, where I also went through this like a surrender of something. And I felt like I didn't feel like nothing mattered, but it was just like I felt like I have no personality and no opinions left, you know. And I even was talking to somebody, and she said, "You know, I can see that something has happened with you recently. What's going on?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" She said, and I said, I'm a nobody. I'm
Hmm.
nobody," because that's how I felt at the time. But that only lasted for a certain time. It lasted some months. And then I started logging into, yeah, I'm not the outer, I'm actually the I am presence instead. But that was still a process, you know, and that was a long way off from my initial 2002 breakthrough. So I'm just saying, you know, you get glimpses and you have to hold on to them as your frame of reference, but then you also have to prepare to work through these layers because we've been on the planet for so long that we have a lot of layers.
Yeah, it's funny, like as you're talking and articulating more of this, it's like this emotion that comes up of just like this anger, this like exhaustion, this, and I don't feel like a victim. It's different than that. I mean, of course there's some victim energy if those emotions are coming up, but it's just like this anger that I'm even in this situation. I mean, I'm like the frustration that I feel that I'm not more ahead so that I can just get this over with. I'm just so tired of feeling like this, but I know that that's
What do you mean
just.
with a head?
Say that again.
What do you mean with a head? You mean physically ahead or
Oh, yeah. I just feel like physically ahead, more ahead in my purpose. I feel like, um, but not to make it about me. I mean, like more ahead than where I'm at emotionally. Like I'm so tired of still feeling like I am dealing with these selves, and I want to be past them, and I want to not feel so triggered about a lot of things that I still feel triggered about. And I know that it's a process, and I'm learning to be more patient. Thank God. That's what the beauty and the gift of getting older. Oh my God, I couldn't even grasp that things took time like a few years ago. I could not even
Mhm.
come to terms with that. I was like, nope, that may be for other people, but I'm special and I'm different and it's going to be different for me. I don't feel that way anymore, but I do still feel this just exhaustion of like still dealing with these selves that feel like they're just inflicting more torture and
Yeah, yeah,
PTSD.
I understand that. But that's really because you haven't seen them yet.
Mm,
So there's something you haven't looked at and said, why do I feel this way? Why do I react this way? Um, because again, as I said, when you have the experience that you described and that I've had myself, it is you realize you are, or you don't realize, you experience, I'm not the outer self.
yep.
And that you need to make that very clear that that's your frame of reference. And that ties in with what I said about surrender, because it's really And I didn't say that before, but it's coming up now. So what really happened as I was working on my psychology during the 90s was that I started having more of these experiences. And I didn't say this to myself in the outer mind, but I realized that I'm not the outer mind. I am that self that I experience. So that became my frame of reference. And that tied in with the surrender because whenever I experience frustration, I knew that isn't who I really am. And therefore I was willing to surrender it. But the thing is, you can't just say, I surrender. You have to see it.
Yeah.
You have to see it. And that's why it's so good with the teachings about the subconscious selves. It is the self is projecting a problem you have to solve. And you can see it from what you just described. You have a self that's projecting, oh, you should be ahead. You should be in a certain situation physically, financially, spiritually. You should be. And I can see that. I had that for many years also in my life.
Mhm.
And
It's just I'm waving the white flag because I'm exhausted. It's more not just like an ego thing. I mean, it's all the ego, and I'm just like exhausted.
yeah, yeah. But but in a sense, you could say you said earlier you're feeling or doing this dance with your ego, and in a sense, you can say we all are because you have this outer self that's projecting how your life should be and how your life should go,
Yes.
and it's not spiritual, of course. And then you have an inner knowing. That's why you're on the spiritual path. You have an inner sense that this isn't really who you are, and this isn't how your life should go because this is not your life plan. To have a outer career and be a millionaire and this and that. It's not your life plan, really. So in a sense, you're sabotaging yourself because you don't want to follow these projections
Hmm.
of what you should do in the outer.
Hmm.
So you are fighting against it, even though you have a self that's projecting you should be
Hmm.
doing all this. And it won't stop being exhausting until you see that self and realize that you can ask yourself, why should I follow what is projecting at me?
Because I'll feel like I'm worth something. I feel like it's worth being here because I feel like,
What, if you have a certain
yeah,
amount of money or this and that?
yeah, money, career, lifestyle, that it'll all just be, it'll be worth it, that I've made it. And that's that lie of the American dream too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But the question is then, if you had it all, would
it
that
wouldn't change
satisfy you?
anything. No.
And that's what I realized at a certain point, that even if I had it, I wouldn't be satisfied. And I looked at so many people that had all the outer things and they were still unhappy.
Yeah.
So I realized my divine plan has nothing to do with that, those outer goals.
Yeah.
But as I said, you have a self that's projecting at you that there's a problem you need to solve, and it is you need to have these outer conditions fulfilled.
But then what are you, okay, so then what are you working towards? I know it's not this material success or thing, but I'm like, what is, because when I talked to Yulita, thank God for her. I mean, she was saying like, because I look at these selves and I equate them and I look at it how it came to be in this lifetime. And she was like, yes, that's fine, but you need to look beyond this life and where these things come from. Because, like, yeah, you can look superficially like, oh, I feel this way because this trauma from my childhood, but you need to be able to look back because it's all going back to the birth trauma. And there was a point, it just left. Hold on. Oh, man. Need to go back. Oh, and then being able to, still participate in your life, raise my son, go to work, all these things, go to school, but you're not as in it. And I'm like, but how do I do that if I don't care about anything that I'm doing? I know there's this switch that'll happen and then I can see a higher vision for my life.
Well, I would suggest right here, that's why I'm breaking in,
Like,
uh, consider what you mean when I don't care. What do you mean by caring?
it's not for my own ego gratification why I'm doing these things. Like going to school to be a therapist. It's not because I know that it will benefit, people eventually, but I still don't know if that's actually a part of my divine plan to do that. So why am I doing it? Because I need to make a living, because I need to survive, because I need to have income coming in, that I need to have some degree that maybe be irrelevant. I don't know. I can get cynical.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is that uh, there's caring and there's caring. In other words, there can be an ego-based caring
Right.
where it's an outer thing, like oh, it's almost like your parents could be proud of you because my daughter is this
No,
whatever,
no,
or my daughter has this big house. You see what I'm saying? There can
no.
be this outer thing,
Mm-mm.
and people respect you because you're somebody.
Mm-mm.
You see what I'm saying? That's the outer self. But then there can be a deeper thing that's your divine plan, and that is to give service.
Yeah,
And so what
I
I'm
do care
trying to
about that.
say is that it could very well be that you have seen a vision of what's part of your divine plan with helping others and getting your education and this and that. And you do need to be practical and make a living because not everybody can make a living being a bum like I have been since 2002.
I admire it because I admire it so.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a real good money-making strategy. So it's not easy to duplicate. So I'm just saying, um, what I'm trying to say is, the masters have said that often we have an intuitive sense of what is part of our divine plan, but not how it can come about.
Yeah.
And so if you can still have an intuitive sense of where you're going, but your outer self is putting a colored overlay over it.
Yes.
Like you should be this, or you should be making money, or you should be. And so that's why I'm saying you can care from that perspective,
Hmm.
or you can find the deeper motivation that's in your divine plan. But sometimes in order to find that deeper motivation, we have to get beyond the outer motivation.
Hmm.
And therefore, sometimes you have to let things float
Yeah.
where you don't know where you're going. But you are taking practical steps like getting an education because it can't really hurt you.
Right.
Uh, and you never know where it's going to lead to. So all I'm saying is it's good to keep taking those steps, even if you don't have that big motivation,
Hmm.
because what's happening is your outer motivation is falling away. And what I'm trying to say is, again, you're beginning to question your ego's outer motivation. But the ego is saying, but then you have to have some other motivation because you've got to know where you're going, because you can't just float around and not know,
I can't.
right? But sometimes you have to decide with the outer mind, why not? Why can't I just take one step at a time without knowing where I'm going? And the reason why I'm saying this is that I've experienced it in myself so many times. When you have the colored overlay of the ego, you can't see the deeper motivation, and you will not be able to see it until you let go of the overlay. And that means you sometimes have to come to that point where you're saying, I let go of this outer motivation and I don't know what's going to come in its stead. And I'm willing to float for a while. In fact, it doesn't matter to me whether something comes. I don't know if do you grasp what I'm saying? It's like you really have to fully let go of one thing before you can see the next step.
Mm.
That's the concept of you're dying that they have in some spiritual traditions, where you are in essence dying. The old sense of self is dying before you can
Mhm.
see the new.
Yeah, almost like a purgatory that you don't take on. Like when I think about that, it's like
Yeah,
I think about like, oh, well, I don't like where I live, and so there's this drag, but I know it's not me, it's a separate self, and I felt that about my last place, and so I know it's a pattern, and
Yeah,
when
yeah.
Yulita and I have connected on that, she was like, no, I've been there, and I went and I left, and I realized, nope, it was me the whole time, and so, yeah, and then it stirs up that, am I on the right path? And the fear of making decisions. Like, did I choose the wrong thing? Again, it's not as strong as it used to be before. It was like life or death going off
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
and I don't feel that way, but it's like that standstill that you talk about, what did you call it? When you're suspended? Is that what you
Suspended
said?
animation or in limbo
Suspended
or
animation. Yeah. And
yeah, yeah.
just like deal with the uncomfortability that these selves have, this restlessness, this
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not where I want to be. And it's like, that's not me. That's these selves. And just keep trucking, keep, one step at a time, one day at a
Well, I mean, in a sense, you could say that where do you want to be? Uh, you want to be in that state where you're completely soft and there's no outer pull on you.
time.
You're anchored just in yourself and you're at peace with just being in yourself. That's ultimately where you want to be.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and there's no outer state that's going to be a substitute for that.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm saying this becomes your frame of reference, and you have to once in a while make an effort. I'm silly to say make an effort. You have to at least try to set some time aside where you can just be at peace or don't do anything, or
Mm.
just lie down and just try to be neutral, be open. Um, it's kind of like, I mean, the mind is always so busy, so sometimes you have to find this way to whatever works for you. Step outside the mind. Um, and just experience that peace, the inner state where you're not going anywhere in the outer. There's nowhere you have to go. You can just be in the moment, as they say, in the now. Um, and I know that's easier said than done, but you have experienced it, and so it's more a matter of referring to that experience because in essence, it's not really a matter of wanting to be somewhere. So that's also something you could, because at the 96 level, we are back to this,
Mm.
what happens at the 96 level is that you realize you don't want to be anywhere in an outer sense. You want to be somewhere in an inner sense. You want to be connected to your I am presence. That's more important to you than anything on earth. And you see what the masters are saying. That's why it's so valuable what they've said. Between the 48th and the 96th level, we are rising above the collective consciousness that's always trying to pull us into doing what everybody else is doing.
Hmm.
And we are building a spiritual self. And that spiritual self, it's what I described that I had wanting to be a good student. It has an ambition of proving that it's a good spiritual student by doing all these outer things and studying teachings and this and that. And as you come close to the 96th level, you either start questioning the validity of that self and how, whether it can take you further, or you refuse to question it, and then you just go into a spiral of seeking to reinforce the self and become even more spiritual. And then you start going down from the 96 level. Uh, but if you do see you know, if you do see it, then you have to realize that the way that self looked at the path, it was okay, it was valuable to get you from the 48th to the 96th level, but it will not get you beyond the 96th level. It will not. And that's why I'm saying you have to be willing to question that. And that's probably the hardest thing about the 96th level, because you have, in a sense, climbing above this downward pull of the mass consciousness. And I can see how I did that for many years. And it was an achievement, it was an accomplishment, it was a victory. And now you just have to let it all go.
Hmm.
Because at this point, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Hmm.
And that's what I saw when I had that experience. I saw my human ambition that it really, and I actually, when I think back at it, I actually realized that from the master's perspective, from the Christ perspective, it meant nothing. It and it's silly to say that because it meant something. It was valuable that it took me to the 96 level, but
Mhm.
it could not take me beyond it. And therefore, in order to go beyond, it meant nothing. It was not like I could say, but look, I've done all of these things and I have risen to this level, and so you've got to let me go further, right? You cannot bargain with it. You cannot force it. You cannot take heaven by force. You can't say, "Oh, look, masters, look, I did all these hours of decrees. You just got to let me go beyond the 96 level." And it's just not going to happen.
No.
So it has to go. It has to be surrendered. And you have to find another way, another approach to the spiritual path. And in order to find that approach, you have to float for a while. You have to be willing to go into nothingness, where it feels like you've got nothing.
Yeah, and the self, like how I interpret that from my perspective is like what I realized when I felt Mother Mary's love reflect back to me. It was like all these impurities, they can't go with you. So that means this ego gratification that you get from thinking that, you can see something in someone else or judging someone for this or feeling like blah blah blah. Like that can't you can't bring that with you. You were not
No,
holier
no,
than thou. You were not
no,
more
no.
advanced, more anything. And so I'm like, oh, this ego, this dirty ego, it can't meet, it won't make it up there. And so I have to let go
Yeah.
of like that
I mean, it's,
satisfaction that I was gonna get from
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
I was superior.
It's not really dirty. It's just unreal. I mean, it's
Right.
just all,
I felt
uh,
dirty. Or
yeah.
I felt like in kind of in shock that I honestly was identifying with this and thought that I was this person. Like I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to think that that was pure, not that I thought that, but I was just like living my life, doing my judgments, living the ego. And then when I saw it reflect back to me, I was like, ew, I don't want to be that person. Like that's not real. That's not real. I don't want to be continuing to perpetuate lies on this planet and like think that that
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
better than anyone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's another thing. I mean, we're talking about a 96 level because what happens is when you see that the ego is not real and it's just predicted an illusion, um, you also lose this desire to be special, uh, which you had before. Because how do you climb to the 96 level unless you feel you're special compared to all these people in the world who are not spiritual?
Hmm.
And perhaps even compared to other people on the spiritual path that you know. I mean, that's a common reaction that we all get trapped in for a while. But that all has to go because it's kind of like well, I mean, you just see it in all kinds of spiritual movements. You see this idolatry around the guru or the leader. And when I had that experience in 2002, it was very, very clear to me that I don't want to be ever in that position. I don't want people to treat me that way because, first of all, I don't need it. Second of all, it blocks their path.
Hmm.
And I honestly, I mean, it's not to criticize the Summit Lighthouse and Elizabeth Care Prophet, but there was an enormous idolatry around her in the Summit Lighthouse, and still is. And it was fine for a certain level of the path. Again, from the 48 to the 96, it's okay. But again, it's not going to get you beyond the 96. You're actually not going to go beyond if you have idolatry of a guru or idolatry of yourself. Because in a sense, you could say that, well, I mean, just one way to illustrate it. You have that situation in Matthew chapter 16, where Jesus is asking his disciples, who do men say that I am? And then who do ye say that I am? And Peter says, "You are the living Christ." And Jesus says, "Blessed art thou, because flesh and blood hasn't revealed it to you." So, in other words, Peter sees the Christ in Jesus. He sees the Christ in Jesus. And that's sort of the starting point on the spiritual path at the 48th level, because you have to see that there's something more than the level of consciousness that most people have. So you
Mm.
have to see that there's, whether you call it a Christ consciousness or something else, doesn't matter. But you have to see there's a higher state of consciousness. You have to glimpse that. And often you see it in somebody else. So that's fine. But then comes that crucial point at the 96 level, where now you have to start seeing it in yourself.
Mm.
And that ties in with this uh, the desire to be special. And I see this in many Ascended Master students. I saw that a lot of people in the Summit Lighthouse, not so much in our movement, because the Master's given so many teachings about it. But in the Summit Lighthouse, there's a lot of these people that wanted to be the most advanced spiritual students. They saw themselves that, oh, we are like Jesus' disciples, and in the future they're going to look at us and say they were the pioneers. They were the ones who, uh, discovered the Master's teachings and this and that. And as long as you have that desire to be special, you cannot see the Christ in yourself, because the Christ is the great equalizer. The Christ mind is oneness. It's horizontal oneness with your higher self and ultimately the ascended masters and the greater. And it's horizontal oneness.
Yes.
And if you desire to be special, how can you experience oneness? Uh, Neither horizontally nor vertically.
Yeah.
If you want to compare yourself to other people here in this world based on outer criteria, because see, the essence of the Christ mind is it's beyond any criteria you can define on earth. And I've seen this, I've seen people do this in the Summit Lighthouse, for example. They had these outer criteria for what it means to be the Christ. And one of them, which was actually unspoken, was that many people felt that, well, if I'm the Christ, I'm always right. So if I get in a disagreement with somebody else, I'm always right because I'm the Christ and they're not. And if they disagree with me, it's just because they don't have the same level of Christhood than I do. And as long as you're in that, how can you see the Christ in yourself, and how can you see the Christ in somebody else? You're just, you cannot look out and in at the same time. You cannot be a house divided against yourself. You cannot serve two masters. Um, and so at some point, you have to come to see that, and you have to come to say, what do I want more? Do I want to be special among men, or do I want to come closer to Christ, to the
Exactly.
Christ mind? Because again, you can't do both. Well, I mean, you can think you're doing both, but you're not.
Yeah, there came a point for me where I saw like this vision and I didn't really care if it came from my ego or not because for me it's not for like my own glory. I feel like I'm here to help people. I'm here to not me the outer self, but I'm just here
Right.
to raise my own consciousness. I actually burst into tears because it's just like that's all that this is ever for. Like all that I'm going through, all that I've ever been through, it's just to keep walking up, seeing the unreality of myself and the world and just
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
moving.
But that's also where it reaches back to what you said earlier about why am I not ahead? Why haven't
Mm,
I achieved some outer goals? Well, it's because you're still focused on yourself
yeah.
instead of focusing on how you can help others.
Yeah.
And that's a principle that I have noticed in myself, in my own life, is that um, sometimes you just have to start doing something, even though you don't know, one, if you're ever going to make money on it, or two, where it's leading.
Yeah.
but you're just considering, given my outer situation as it is, given myself as I am, how could I help others? What could I do to serve some aspect of life rather than worrying about the money situation and this and that? Um,
I make sticky notes for myself
yeah, that's fine.
and I put them on my wall. Whether
Okay.
I look at them or not, but it's
I
nice. I
would
just
suggest putting them on your forehead,
I'm telling you,
right on the
honest,
backside, and then stick it to
yes.
your foot.
Yes, I've written on my arm before, and I'm like, when will it sink in? Maybe it'll if I write it on my forehead, it'll just penetrate, and then because I
No,
even
but it's again this, your outer mind has a vision of what should or shouldn't happen to you,
right, yeah,
and it's blocking your vision of your divine plan.
hmm
So sometimes you have to be willing to neutralize that outer vision and do something that is not necessarily contrary, but certainly different
yeah,
than what the outer self is telling you, and say, no, I'm just going to do this. And then without having any intention or goal of what it should lead to or not lead to. But lo and behold, sometimes when you do this, it leads to something
hmm
that takes you another step forward. And maybe that leads to something else after a while. And you after a while you can look back and say, wow, if I hadn't taken that little small step that felt very insignificant back then, I wouldn't have been where I am today. Because one thing led to another. Now you would have been somewhere else, but I'm just saying, um, sometimes you just have to start walking without knowing where you're going, because it's the outer mind that always wants to know everything ahead of time and
hmm
have everything under control.
yeah. Thankfully, I just had some humbling experiences happen recently where I didn't feel as attached because before I was starting to see this vision and I was like, oh, it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. And it was like so exciting. And then I don't remember what happened, but I just kind of let that go. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't feel like it has to be like anything. I see things, but
Well,
you know,
that's what I mean, because you also said that you feel exhausted sometimes, and that's because the outer self is always projecting a vision of what should or shouldn't happen. And then when it doesn't happen, you have to deal with that. So then you have to emotionally adjust to that and
yeah.
explain that away, and it just becomes exhausting after a while.
Yeah, I'm exhausted being with myself. I'm exhausted just being left with myself and like, I
Yeah, but who is it that's exhausted?
something
Who,
that feels really identified with my identity body, that's for sure.
yeah, so who is exhausted? The conscious you?
Yeah,
Is the conscious you exhausted?
I don't know, maybe.
No, it isn't.
No?
No, how would it be? It's not affected by anything on earth. It's pure neutral awareness.
I thought that
How
was
can
my
it
I
be
am present.
exhausted? No, it's not your I am presence. Your outer I am presence in the spiritual realm is not exhausted either. So who is exhausted?
The separate self.
Yeah, which
I
is
know.
exhausted by being with itself.
I'm exhausted. Yes, that self is exhausted. And then it wants to be like, well, maybe if I had a partner, maybe I should go on dates, maybe I should do this, and like tries
Yeah,
to
yeah.
internalize. And I'm
And
like,
that's
well,
all
no, you're stuck with yourself.
distractions.
Say
That's
that
all
again.
distractions
Oh
that
yeah.
are only have one goal, is prevent you from looking in the mirror at yourself and saying, what is frustrated? Is it me, or is it one part of the outer self that's frustrated with another part of the outer self? So in other words, I have two selves that are fighting with each other, that are taking over my life and my consciousness and my awareness and my self-image, and 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 they are never going to resolve this. At the level of these outer selves, you can never resolve it. But you, the conscious you, can let go of it. But
Mm,
you have to find out why it's important for you. Why do you even identify with these selves? Why do you believe anything they tell you?
yeah, I guess habits, you know. Just it's a habit that why would I believe them? I guess because
Yeah.
I've identified with them for so long and
But
there's
can you narrow down what they're telling you that you should be or that you shouldn't be, or can you put words on that?
I think it's just this general frustration with the uncomfortability of being with
There is no general frustration. You can't just say, I'm frustrated.
right.
You're always frustrated about something. The outer self always has a specific thing it's frustrated with. So what is that?
Not probably not meeting some outer standard
Yeah, what standard?
that I'm not more at peace, that I'm not
That's not an outer standard.
or
What would it, what outer thing would it take for you to be at peace then?
oh nothing. I mean, that's an internal thing.
Well, so then you can't be frustrated about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something there you're not seeing
Mm-hmm.
that you can't put words on.
Yeah.
Um, so that's
Loneliness,
some,
maybe it's like loneliness, feeling like yeah, like I'm not connected and I'm frustrated that I'm feeling lonely and so I want to distract myself with this or a potential partner or content media, you know?
yeah, but your conscious you is not lonely.
Yeah.
There can be an aspect of the outer self that's lonely because it's not connected to another aspect of it, or there's another aspect of the self that blocks your connection. So, you know, because you think that your relationship should live up to a certain outer standard.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were you, I would take some time, sit down with a piece of paper and just, yeah, a bigger piece of paper. Much bigger. So, but try and ask yourself this, these kind of questions. What do I really feel? What am I frustrated with? What are the words? And then just write what comes to you and see if you can narrow down what specific things the outer self is frustrated with.
Mm.
Because there's something I sense very clearly, there's something you're not seeing right now.
Yeah.
I am not psychic, so I can't tell you what it is. And I think you actually need to discover it because it needs to come to you in your words, not my words.
Yeah, because the farthest I can see is just this anger and frustration and like self-hatred. Like, s-
Yeah. So one separate self hates another separate self.
yeah. And I'm
And
really
yeah,
identified with them. Isn't that interesting? It's like
yeah,
I
yeah.
know logically, I'm like, no, that's not my presence.
But
But
but that's because there's some kind of belief behind this that you should have been able to do something or something shouldn't have happened to you, and because it didn't, you have failed somehow.
mm-hmm.
And so I'm just saying there's something there. That's what's blocking you, and you need to make some effort to discover what is your frustration really. Just because you see what your outer self is doing. Uh, you're feeling frustrated, but when I'm trying to ask questions about it, it's just sort of putting up a smoke screen. Oh, I'm
Mm.
just generally frustrated because it doesn't want you to see what you're frustrated about because once you see it, you'll see it's completely ridiculous.
Well, what's coming, and maybe this is still another part of the spoke stream, but whenever it's like I'm not living up to this outer standard of success, but we've talked about that. So maybe that's not,
Yeah, there must be something deeper, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, so I'm not sure we're on the same wavelength here
maybe.
because uh, no, I understand where you're coming from, but what I'm trying to ask about is I know I said what is the specifics, but it's not outer things, it's specific beliefs about yourself that makes you frustrated. So it's not just the outer success that's making you frustrated, it's that you have a belief that you should or something should have happened to you or something shouldn't have happened to you. And it's the specific belief about that I'm talking about.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying you can necessarily uncover that right now, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying spend some time thinking about that, or rather just spend some time, log into the frustration and then see what you could write down that comes to you. Because I've done that several times, and it's interesting what comes out that you had never thought about with the outer mind.
Mm.
But sometimes the words just come from a deeper level, where you see them.
Yeah.
And the outer self is just trying to put up the smoke screen so you can't see behind it.
Hmm.
And that's what you need to try and penetrate.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll get there.
And in a sense, you could say, because I remember, thinking back about this. Um, I've had people over the years since I started doing this work who have talked to me about, but you haven't attracted that many people. You don't have a big organization. You don't sell that many books. You don't have that many views on your YouTube videos and this and that. Why haven't you become famous like Eckhart Tolle and that kind of thing?
Why
And
would you want that?
yeah, yeah, but I'm just saying, this is an example of the outer
Stance.
uh, mind seeking to impose a standard.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of assumption underlying it that, oh, you think I'm doing this because I want to be famous and become a millionaire?
Right.
You think that was what motivated me in 2002 to say yes to Jesus, that I would create this website?
Mm-mm.
So you see, you have to discover your inner motivation, because your real motivation is not to become outwardly successful.
No.
So therefore, you're not frustrated that you're not outwardly, yeah, your outer self is, but you are not. Um, so you need to reconnect to that inner motivation. What is it that really actually uh, floats your boat in terms of giving you the deeper satisfaction that you are here to serve, do something for others, whatever it may be.
Yeah, like being in service, being accepted and loved and validated that what I'm doing is making a difference. Like that it's for something that I would
Yeah,
get
but
some
that's
type of
that's
payoff.
a little bit that's again a little bit dangerous there, making a difference, because how do you judge that?
Right. Exactly.
How do you measure? See,
Mm-hmm.
and that's again the outer self. Everything has to be measurable. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Oh, if you haven't sold as many books as Eckhart Tolle, then you're obviously not as successful. You're measuring things.
Mm-mm.
But if you're being who you are and enjoy doing what you're doing, how do any comparisons really matter? So that's
Right.
what you need to connect to. So what I was trying to say somewhere is that you have the outer frustration, which you're very well aware of, but you haven't really connected to that deeper motivation of who you are and what you really want to bring forth on the planet. So you can't connect to that service by saying, "Oh well, how am I going to make money on it?" or "How am I going to be recognized?"
Yeah.
But what gives me the inner satisfaction of doing it? Just doing it without the results. You have to sort of disconnect it from the results. What gives you fulfillment and enjoyment from doing it?
Yeah. This like deeper expression and connection
Yeah, yeah.
is
I
flow.
mean, I'm probably throwing too many things at you, but
They call it the modus operandi in the Healing Your Spiritual Traumas book. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'll write that down. Hmm. Good stuff.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say, to get back to what I talked about earlier, is that uh, you can have breakthroughs on the path, uh, but it's just the beginning of the next cycle, so to speak. I mean, there's still things to overcome, and it happens gradually. So it's not like you pass the initiation at the 96 level, and now you're home free. You know,
No.
there's still going to be psychology
Yeah.
to resolve, and so that's why you have to take it in stages. Um, and I think sometimes we become too impatient with ourselves. I mean, I think what I locked into at a certain point with myself is that, in a sense, you have an outer self that wants you to come to a point where you can feel safe, or it feels
Yeah.
it's sort of reached some kind of point where now I'm okay, now I'm where I need to be, you know.
Yeah.
And and what I realized was that there are no outer criteria that's ever going to get me to that point. Because what I really long for is a connection with my higher self, with my
Yeah.
own presence. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the only thing that's ever going to fulfill me.
Yep.
No amount of money, no relationship, no nothing, nothing outer.
Yep.
Um, and that's, I think, what you start locking into at the 96 level, because all of a sudden the inner connection becomes more important than any outer things.
Yeah, I used to play so many games to try to get that feeling fulfilled of like, oh, that someone else could fill that void for me, like
Mhm.
partners or relationships. Like, oh, if they could just validate me and tell me that I'm this or that, it would just, and I could feel that connection all the time. And then I would get addicted to that. And I'm externalizing, I'm like missing the whole point because I was trying to
Mhm.
get that from the outside and that they couldn't give me. Even if I got it for a minute, it was like this, again, this black hole. It was never enough. It was never going to be enough.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no, no. I mean, you can keep chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for any number of future lifetimes, and it's never going to be enough.
Mm-mm.
And that's part of the what you start realizing at the 96 level, that these outer things are not going to ultimately fulfill you. But you don't have a clear vision of what it is, but you can, at least in the outer mind, keep in mind that it's really your connection to your I am presence that's the
Yeah.
only fulfillment there is.
I had that experience not too long ago where it just felt like everything I was just like floating through life in this connected sense. I just didn't feel triggered by anything. And it was just like this, like, I don't know, maybe it was like multiple weeks or days. I can't remember, but it was like after I moved here and I was, I guess, invoking light. And I just felt like I was just flowing from one thing to the next and I wasn't getting triggered. And I just had this deeper connection. I felt like I was in this flow. And like even when I would see things, it wouldn't pull me in. I was still deeply connected. And I don't
Hmm.
know what happened, but I did feel that for some weeks at least.
Yeah, yeah. But that's, I mean, that's so many people have been through that, because you can have these experiences and then they don't last, and then you are wondering why it didn't last, and you're thinking
Mhm.
maybe you did something wrong. But it's just part of the path.
Yeah.
I mean, it will be that way for a while, and then eventually there comes a point where it just becomes the norm. It becomes the backdrop of your life. But you can still, in an outer way, get pulled into situations, uh, but never really identified with them.
Hmm.
But that took me quite a number of years after 2002 to get to that point. It's only been in the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years that it's been better.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but it also about the realism of realizing that you you are doing a lot of practical things in life, and you're not, you know, in a deeply spiritual consciousness while you are doing the dishes or going to work or this or that, you know. So you don't make these demands on yourself. It's like this. I mean, it's again, you know, spiritual people. It's again this. between the 48th and the 96th level, you've got to have something that motivates you to make an effort, right? Partly to do whatever spiritual practice you have and study spiritual teachings, but also do something different than what everybody else is doing,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to have some. There's uh, got to be a bait, There's got to be a payoff, and you are looking for some payoff, and then you get closer and closer to the 96th level, and then you think, ah, that's the ultimate payoff. And then the trick is, yeah, there is an ultimate payoff, but it's not what you thought it was between the 48th and the 96th level because you had no awareness whatsoever to really grasp what it is. And so that's why, again, you have to be willing to question your motivation or modus operandi. What was it that drove you? It's just no longer applicable.
Mhm.
It doesn't take you beyond. It's this again, in Buddhism, they have this concept of the farther shore. So you are on one shore and you are crossing some ocean or river to the farther shore, and you have this boat, a prajna boat, wisdom boat, right? So just imagine this literally. You are you have to go somewhere, so you set out in this little boat across the ocean. There's waves and this and that, and you make it. You make it to the farther shore. Uh, but now what are you going to do? Are you going to take this boat and carry it with you as you walk on land?
No.
Or are you going to leave it behind and say, well, you served me well, thanks, but now I don't need you anymore? And so many people want to drag it with them. And that's where it becomes a millstone around your neck.
Mhm.
Um, and that is can be very, very hard for the ego to give up. As I said, if it had this sense of being special, or that I've really done all this work, or it couldn't just have been wasted. No, it wasn't wasted. It got you to that point. It's just not going to get you any further.
That's something that I'm really grateful for because I've been on the path long enough that when I'm faced with this, like, I don't know how I would have reacted to this years ago, but when I was faced with what you're talking about, I don't I don't care if like I'm not taking it with me. Like, I'm not taking
Yeah,
this
yeah,
ego, this sense of specialness. Great. Let me just get to the 144th and get the fuck out of here. Like that's how I mean, I'm joking about it, but like I'm just like, great. I don't care. Let's just keep going. I just one step, another level. Like
yeah, 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 yeah. And that's what you have to do. But you also have to overcome the sense of wanting to get out of here.
I know. I was talking about with a friend. I was like, I like humor. Humor helps me get through life. And I was like, beam me up, Mother Mary, like take me up. And I know that's not absolutely not at all like what's happening, but
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's very understandable. I felt that way for a long time on the path, but I also came to a point where I realized it just hit me one day. You are not going to get out of here until you are in complete acceptance of being here.
Yep.
Because the spiritual path is not about running away from something, and that's what you see in a lot of spiritual people. Um, they think it's a matter of getting away from the frustration, the suffering. You want to get away from that. And that's why I'm saying, as long as you're seeing through that filter, you're looking at the path through that filter of the outer self, um, you can't see what the Christ consciousness is about because the Christ consciousness isn't about outer success or fulfillment or, I mean, look at Jesus. When he died on the cross, what had he achieved? He was convicted as a common criminal. He was tortured. He was put on a cross and he died. They didn't even know if any of his followers would still remember him. And so there was no movement there. I mean, if we look back at Jesus, it must have been glorious and wonderful, but what had he actually achieved in an outer sense? And So I'm just saying we can't measure. We have to be careful that we are not, on the one hand, running away from the what the outer self wants to run away from, the frustration of the outer self, or
Mhm.
not running towards the goals defined by the outer self. That's okay between the 48 and the 96, but at the 96 level, we have to reevaluate. And the goal really is the alpha is more and more connectedness to your higher self. The omega is how do I serve life? How do I help other people?
Mm.
You're looking like I've thrown too much at you.
No, I'm just processing it. Because I'm also like, even as you're talking, like noticing my own psychology that's still distracted,
Mhm.
but I'm
Uh,
just processing. It's not, yeah, you haven't thrown too much
but
at
you really have to try and sit down, as I said, with a blank piece of paper, but buy yourself a notepad, for example, so you can keep
me. I
that
have
for a
one.
while. Okay.
One.
And then just try to tune in to some particular aspect of your frustration or even your desires, success criteria, and then write down whatever comes to you and then see if that gives you greater clarity. Because it's, what I have experienced so many times is that when you really see what the outer self is frustrated with, you you see how contradictory it is. And that's when you can snap out and say, "Oh, I don't want to be caught up in this." I mean, I don't know if I told this story before to you, but I've certainly told it before that a number of years ago, I was just lying on my bed, and all of a sudden I saw that I had this self that was the problem solver self. It loves to be the hero that solves problems.
Mm.
The thing is, the last thing that this problem solver self wanted was to be out of work. So, so you see the impossibility here. The problem solver self wants to solve problems, but the ultimate success of the problem solver self was there was no more problems to solve, right? No, because then the problem solver self would be out of work. So there always had to be problems, meaning if there weren't any real outer problems, the problem solver self would create some problems so it could solve them. And I saw how, I literally saw how much of my life and my attention and my energy had been tied up in this up until that point. And I saw that I could continue to do this for the rest of my life
Yep.
and any number of future lifetimes. But when I saw it, that the problem solver self is actually the one who defines what the problem is. And in many cases, there wasn't actually a problem. It's just that any situation that comes up, the problem solver self can only look at it as a problem. So it takes a situation where there really is no problem, but it always projects this coloring on it. There's a problem that has to be solved.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, was the one who had to solve it, which means tying up my energy and attention in
Yep.
this.
They call that type A personality over here in the States.
Yeah, well, whatever they call it, but it's just again this, as the master said, the self projects as a problem, has to be solved, and you are the one who has to engage in it. And that's why you said earlier you're identified with these self, this frustration. So in a sense, you could say you have a self that projects, oh, the problem is that you're frustrated someone. You shouldn't be you're frustrated.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to find a shortcut to get away from the frustration. But the shortcut is to see that there is actually no reason for the frustration. It's just all made up in your own mind.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yeah. That problem solver self. I was in a meeting with some other students and we were given invocations and I think it was Sandy. She was like, This problem solver self, Saint Germain talked about that. She's like the encyclopedia, the oracle that
Hmm.
knows every dictation from what time of year it was and when it happened. She was like, yeah, this year, this dictation was Saint Germain on this conference. Go find it. I'm like,
Right?
okay.
Yeah.
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 Making a problem out of nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're still on Earth, you know.
Hello.
Because as long as there's a problem that you haven't solved, you can't just walk away from it. But the problem is that you will never solve the problem until you walk away. The only way to overcome, to be free of problem, is to walk away.
I honestly think that's how I've gotten this far at this point because I was bound up in so much drama and patterns and I just stopped. I didn't avoid, I didn't run from it. I just
Mhm.
stopped. I
Oh,
just
yeah.
completely let it go.
Mhm.
And I started to actually even feel like, wow, the energy, the time, and the attention and the life force that I would give to thinking about and making something a problem when I just like I don't know, I just dropped it and I just kept walking.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And that's just what you have to continue to do because things will continue to come up.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, you could also say uh, to trick the problem solver self is you let go of the idea that there's a final solution. You know, the big breakthrough where you're awakened, now you're enlightened, and you have no more frustrations. You give up that and you say, I'm willing to look at whatever comes up in my psychology.
Right.
And if I'm doing that the rest of my time in embodiment, so what?
I think I had a self that or have a self that thought there was like this ultimate perspective to have
Yeah, yeah.
like if I'm having some interpersonal drama or that I'm noticing someone's projecting at me and I'm like getting triggered by that or not, that I need to see what they're doing
Hmm.
or just not engage at all. Like I don't have the time or the energy to even to have it affect me because I'm having,
Hmm.
I had this experience with my work manager where it was like clearly like some projections were coming at me and I was just like taking it personally even though I knew what she was doing, but it was I just don't have the time or the energy to care.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think I would take it personally when people, even though I knew it wasn't about me, I would take it personally when people would project onto me some like whatever they're projecting on to me.
Sure.
Like, yeah, and it has nothing. Who cares?
Well, it's you have to ask yourself, why do I take it personally?
Right.
Uh, why does it matter to me? What self do I have that thinks this is important?
Because I want to prove them wrong, or I want
Yeah,
to,
yeah. But in a sense, that's also a problem solver self, you know.
yeah, or
People
that I'm
shouldn't be
superior.
projecting at me,
I'm so
you know.
superior. Look at me not reacting. You're just so clearly traumatized and projecting. I'm so much better.
Yeah, yeah. What I realized at a certain point was that I had a self that felt that since I'm a good person and I don't go around deliberately hurting other people,
Right.
I shouldn't be falsely accused of
Yes.
hurting somebody.
Yeah.
But and so I would react when I was accused. I would think I had to defend myself or explain people or try to
Yes.
comfort people or make them not feel bad and this and that.
Mm.
But at one point, I realized that some people, uh, it's not me they're frustrated with. The frustration is in their own minds. They're just taking it out on somebody. And if it was,
Oh my gosh, so sorry.
and if I wasn't there and there was a lamppost there, they would take it out on the
Yeah.
lamppost. So why should I take this personally when
Hmm.
it clearly, was just their psychology? But see, I took it personally because of my psychology. And so when I started looking at that, that's when I started making some progress.
Hmm.
Uh, And in a sense, 96 level, you start depersonalizing your life because you realize it's not about me. I mean, for probably, I said in 2002, I had that breakthrough, and probably for the next 10 years, my overall motto was really, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's not about me. And there was a certain aspect of self-denial about it, but there was also this when I said this, I could step outside the situation and look at my reaction instead of being pulled into it.
Yeah, I had that similar experience happen with my mother, who's an alcoholic and um, lives in the same apartment complex as me. And she was really abusive to me and other people. And I just realized like this is just her enacting these selves and it has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And I found like whenever she was bombarding me with her, typical, just the scripts that she's been playing out for decades, I was just like, this has
Hmm.
nothing to do with me, and I don't have to tolerate it. And it's not personal.
Hmm.
I'm just choosing. Like, if you were my mom, you would not even be anywhere near me in my life. Like, there's
Hmm.
no room in my life for that kind of energy, and it's not personal. And she wants to make it personal. She wants to make it about
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these things. And oh, you're my daughter. And who does that to their mother? And I'm like, you are talking to the wrong person because I don't care.
But see, it's also possible that if you can totally depersonalize it, so that you don't have a reaction to her,
Hmm.
that you could eventually have her break through and you could have a different relationship with her.
I don't know how to do that because whenever she's coming at me like that, I
No, but
just remove
you
myself
are
from
doing it in the sense that you're depersonalized. You're not
right.
reacting to her the way she's used to
Yeah.
both you and other people react.
Yeah.
And it could be, I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but
Right.
it could be that after a while she realizes that maybe she would actually like to have a deeper relationship with somebody instead of this ping-ponging that she's been doing.
Hmm.
And maybe, it could happen. I'm not saying it necessarily will, but
Yeah, I'm still learning how to navigate those things because it's usually like whenever she's doing that, it's through a screen. Like she's texting me all these things and I'm just like not
mhm.
responding. But we did have an
Yeah.
interaction in the flesh and she started to go off and started to yell and my son was right there and she was like, get out. And I'm like, happily. And I just picked him up and we went and he was like, what was
Yeah.
that? My son, I was like, I don't know. I think she's just having a hard time.
She was
But
just having one of her episodes.
she literally, I mean, it's like some,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, bless her. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
But I
it's
mean,
like, yeah, and then she'll like, it's this classic, I don't like to use these labels, but it's the only way I can usually describe things. This classic like narcissistic type of self that, um, and then she'll like make it about me, why I have boundaries. Like, what did she say? I think the last text message she said she like went on this rampage, all these projections, it's not about me. And then she tried to get me to do something for her by way of coercion and manipulation. And not that I was manipulated. I'm just looking at the tactics. And then
yeah.
the next day, it was like all these different selves. Like it was like this schizophrenic thing. And then
Mhm.
it was, oh, I would love like acting like none of it happened, as if she can't like just scroll up on her messages to see like what she had done or what she had said, like complete denial of reality. And then she was like, what did she say? She said, "Oh, I would love to see you and P. Uh, I hope you're not still upset with me." As if I was ever upset with, it's just like these.
Mhm.
Thankfully, she's so extreme. It's so easy. It's like textbook stuff that I can see.
Mhm.
But
Well, I think the essence of a narcissist is that uh, they can't they can't bear to be with themselves, so they
she
always have
cannot.
to create a distraction
Yeah,
by engaging other people. And the only way they can do this is projecting at other people.
yeah, she can't. Yeah,
There's something wrong with you,
yeah,
because that's how they learn that they can get people to engage. And
yep,
and I think but that's why I'm saying if you can overcome the selves that cause you to feel like you're obligated, and obviously it's hard with family because, oh, it's my mom, I should care, right? But why should you?
No, I don't. That's the thing. I don't. And I look at my other friends who do still have relationships and they're in the spiritual teachings. And I'm like, I just don't. I thankfully, I don't know, maybe this helped because I don't have a relationship with my father either because of his personality stuff. And I don't feel obligated to. I mean, there's
Mhm.
some things I remember like a few months ago, my son was like, "Oh, you should talk to your dad." And I was like, "Should I?" And I'm like, "No, there's a reason why I don't. There's a
Mhm.
reason why I don't." And same thing with my mom. And, when I was younger, she was actually removed from my life, like no contact from like 8 to 15. And I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me because it taught me like I don't need her. I don't need to put up with that because I can't imagine what that would have done to a child and to my
Mhm.
psychology if I would have stayed in that
Yeah.
dynamic. And like I'm so easy to cut people off that are not, and it's not an avoidance thing. It's just like I can see things for what they are, and I'm like, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not obligated to. I don't have to. I have other
Mhm.
things to use my energy towards.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that probably blows her mind because in her mind, it's like these expectations, and you have to be this because you're this to me. It's like a cog in a wheel. And I'm like, I've never subscribed to that. And I feel uncomfortable. I remember I would feel uncomfortable if I ever would
Yeah, but
be.
that's because their modus operandi with relationships is to make you feel obligated and force you to react. And they can't imagine another way to just have a free relationship, a free flowing relationship. And so I think you have a right to say, I don't want these kind of people in my life. Um,
Did you
or
have an
you have,
experience like that?
no, but I did at some point have a conflict with my father who was very, very stubborn.
Hmm.
And I just decided at some point that I would rather continue to have a relationship with my father because I can see where we were headed. And so I just stopped challenging him or defending myself. Whenever he tried to project at me, I just talked about something positive. And after a while, he just stopped projecting. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he just had a, certain type of psychology, but
Hmm.
no more difficult than many other people.
Hmm.
Well, a little more difficult than a lot of other people, but still. So I'm not saying it'll work with everybody, but if you get to a point where you are not reacting to them, then that's a victory for you. And whether they change or not, that's up to their free will, is the way I look at it. Because I mean, it's kind of if we go back to the 96 level, at the 96 level, one of the things you do, you take responsibility for yourself.
Hmm.
So you're saying, it's really all about me changing myself. And it's not that it's happening all at once, but you start taking responsibility. Because what most people do, they're in this dynamic where you have some subconscious selves that causes you to react a certain way. Like, for example, you don't like to be accused.
Hmm.
So what you are doing is you are trying to arrange your life and your relationships in such a way that nobody accuses you.
Yes.
Because if there's no finger that pushes your button, then you can forget you have the button.
Yep.
At the 96 level, you are saying, wait a minute now. It's not about not having anybody push my button. It's about me seeing why I have the button and letting it go so I don't have it anymore. And so what I went through was this period where I had to realize that there are certain people I can't help.
Mm-mm.
There are certain people I can't change. But when I looked at myself and overcame the need I had to change other people, then I didn't have a need to change them anymore. And that meant in some cases I could have a different kind of relationship with them. And some people actually, they changed the dynamic, as I said, with my father. Or there were other people that didn't want to change. And then I just moved on with life. I mean, I left them behind. I said, why am I spending my time with people that I can't help if there are other people I could help?
Mm.
So I just sort of but you see what I'm saying? When you don't have the need to change other people in order to feel better yourself because you're dealing with your psychology directly,
Hmm.
your dynamic with other people changes because you're not trying to force them. You're not trying to force them to change.
But what if, like with my mom, what if there's, what if she tries to like guilt me into, again, I know it's a separate self that could be guilted, but what if she like uses the only way that she knows how to communicate, which is through those means, those coercive ways, about like wanting to see my son? And then, like, if I'm not wanting to hang out with her because of the way that she is, and I don't want him going over there just because the environment, she's always drinking and, do whatever you want. But it's just like, no, it's because what comes up
Well,
for me
he's
is
old
like,
enough now to decide whether he wants to or not.
he's 6. Yeah, and he does. So, but he wants to go over there because she lets him do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, well,
but
so I would let him do that for a while and see what that goes, whether he gets tired of it or not, or you can talk to him about it also. But the thing is, if you overcome your own reactionary patterns towards her, you could start asking her questions that you have not been able to ask before, you know, instead of always reacting, instead of defending yourself. You could, I mean, just say, Mom, it's not going to work. I'm not feeling guilty.
mm-hmm,
Isn't there another way we could relate to this?
mm-hmm,
I mean, just throw out the question.
mm-hmm,
Don't necessarily need to put her on the spot and want an answer, but just somehow in her mind, try to insert a little bit of seeds that might cause her to question the pattern she's in.
right, because my tactic before is just no response or
Yeah, 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 and that's normal. I mean, first you react, and then you get to a no response. But there can also come a point where you can say, it's not about me reacting or not, and it's not about me wanting to change her, help her, but I could at least throw out a question once in a while. Maybe there's a different way to
hmm.
do things, a different kind of relationship, and just do something that might plant a seed. It may not come to fruition, so what?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you
So,
can help somebody else down the road.
yeah. But like letting my son go over there, like if she wants to see him, like if she texts me, "Oh, I'd love to see you in P." That's his nickname. And I don't fucking want to go over there, to be honest with you. But he can.
Yeah, you could at least try and see how it works.
But then act like, because this is what she does, like that happened, right? Long berating text messages, right? You just act like it didn't happen because she wants to act like it didn't happen. I wanted to like print them out and be like, would you like to look at this? Just to piss her
Yeah,
off.
but is it gonna help her in any way? I don't know. I mean, I would. It's again one of those things you just have to experiment, I think.
Hmm.
You experiment for two reasons. First of all, to see if you still have a reaction to her.
Hmm.
And then you go after that. And then you experiment to see, is there something that could maybe make her question
So
a
just
few things?
ask her a question.
Yeah, I would just ask questions.
Like, why do you think that you need to do this?
Yeah, or why is the only way you can relate to me to try and make me feel guilty? Couldn't
Because
there
it's
be a
just not
better
gonna
way
work.
to relate?
Yeah.
I'm not a child anymore. Could we relate as adults? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever comes to you. I don't know her. So
And then the berating of like, oh,
yeah,
you're
yeah, but that
disrespectful.
doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just saying if you insert a little seed, sometimes, you tell people something, and then 2 months later, they say the same thing back to you as if they thought of it themselves.
Hey, whatever.
And maybe they won't, but I mean, then at least at least it's kind of like this again. Um, you can take it back to the 96 level, right? If you're going to go into being the living Christ, um, the living Christ is not passive sitting in a cage, feeling at peace with itself and the world.
Hmm.
Because the whole idea of Jesus' life, he went out among the people and wrestled with them, whatever state of consciousness they were in.
Hmm.
Some he gave a cup of cold water in Christ's name. Others he called them hypocrites and challenged them, whatever. But I'm just saying, instead of just not reacting to your mother, you could ask these questions. Maybe they come to fruition, maybe they don't. But it also helps you clarify. Maybe you can't help your mother, but maybe you could help somebody else.
Hmm.
Maybe that's part of your service to life. Because again, the way I always look at it somewhere is we have as spiritual people, we have a certain amount of choice before we come into embodiment, what situation we choose to come into. And it's partly because we want to learn something about ourselves, resolve psychology, but also partly because we want to help people who are in that state of consciousness.
Hmm.
And it may not be those specific people like your father and your mother, but maybe it could be others. So that's why I'm saying you always look at your situation and say, how can I turn my situation into an asset for my divine plan
Hmm.
instead of just being a drag or something I have to get over? How
Hmm.
could I actually use my experience to help other people? And it's again this, you overcome the focus on self, you realize that whatever you have gone through, there is definitely other people who have gone through the same thing.
Mm.
And maybe you could help them somehow.
Yeah, I think before it felt like this self-preservation why I didn't respond because I'm not
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's natural. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying when you get over that, that's when you can start saying, okay, so what's the next step here? How could I turn this into an active and use it into an asset and use it?
Well, I guess, I had that opportunity and then I'm gonna wrap up because I do have to go to work.
Yeah,
But I had this experience recently where an ex-boyfriend that I had that very long karmic relationship with, right as I was coming into the teachings, that relationship was, dissolving.
right.
And he came to my workplace just to see me. He found out
Right.
where I worked and came to see me. And then I was just like, whoa. And then like some time went on and I thought to ask him like why did you do that? And like, what in my head I was like, what makes you think that like you weren't thinking about any other thing but yourself? Like how do you think that would make me feel that you showed up? But then I was like, I'm not going to say that because again, I just wanted to remove all of my energy from that person in that relationship because of how much it took. And so I didn't end
Mhm.
up saying that. It was more of I don't think I said anything like that, but I guess it could be coming from a not a separate self that I could ask a question yeah, like what you're saying, like asking why did you do that?
Yeah, just whatever questions come to you, it might help them think about it, like
Yeah.
you have been thinking about things.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the long run, maybe you could also help people. I mean, you see, how many people have grown up with an alcoholic parent, but do not know what you know about psychology and how to work on your psychology and how to overcome that instead of just being a victim for life
Mm-hmm.
of your childhood. I mean, how
Right.
many people, for that matter, are victims for life of their childhood instead of overcoming it?
Well, then it becomes that other end of the extreme. It's just like you remove all energy and it becomes this kind of like, I'm not giving you any of my energy anymore. Cause that's how it was like a power over dynamic of like, oh, well, I'm just not going to engage. And like, I
Yeah,
win.
yeah,
I didn't engage. I win.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't want that either. But I mean, you got to start somewhere.
No, but there's always a middle way where you are engaging without giving it energy because you're not taking it personally, you're not involved in it, you're not identified with it.
Yeah.
It's not about you. It's about can you help other people? But it's not about having a specific goal for how to change them.
Yeah.
It's like you're just throwing things out there and leaving it up to people what they do with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It helps to have somebody ask questions about things you've forgotten a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh, I love talking to you, Ken. I love asking you questions. Um, great. Well, I don't know how to end this other than just saying thank you again. And I'm so
Yeah, yeah,
grateful for you and Yulita and being able to talk with you guys like friends. It feels like it's gotten easier over I want to say over the years, but I guess I haven't been in the teachings that long. But each time it feels more and more easeful connecting
yeah,
with you. And
yeah,
probably because we're both working on our psychology. And I'm just grateful that we get this opportunity. And I look forward to more and more of it. And
yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
your
yeah,
time.
yeah. You're welcome. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.